All right, everybody, welcome to Lifestyle Medicine. Today we've got MAGALI BRECKE, who is a licensed acupuncturist and co-founder of Kitchen Witch Bone Broth, which has gone national, right? As of how long?
Yeah, sort of national, definitely West Coast.
Definitely West Coast. Okay.
Yeah, we started in 2014.
That's when you guys actually started the whole
Yeah.
process?
Yep.
Wow. So for the people listening, I know Magali from our grad school program at Five Branches University in Santa Cruz, California for acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. So you guys were, what year did you graduate?
Grayson, what year did I graduate? I graduated in 2014.
Okay, you did.
Yeah, I graduated in 2014 and oh my God, it might have been 2015. I don't know. It all became a blur when we
Yeah.
started Kitchen Witch, and I was simultaneously running a artisanal food startup and
Right.
finishing my last year and taking the boards and doing all of that. So,
Right.
yeah, we started in 2014. I believe that is the year I graduated.
Who knows for sure, right?
Yeah, and it all started there.
Yeah. Well, so what was, again, you started the bone broth thing while you were at school, and you guys give us a little backstory on how you started the process, because I remember you guys making the small batches of bone broth, and then there was this point where you guys, I think, started bringing it to school, and people were taking, there was sort of like people were taking orders more or less, like, yeah, I'd like to get some bone broth.
Yeah.
And for the people listening, bone broth, it's one of the age-old traditional foods. Lots of cultures do it, but it's seen in Chinese medicine as a kidney tonic. It's incredibly good for its mineral content, collagen, fat, proteins. It's an amazing superfood of sorts. But yeah, give us a background on how how it started, because
How we started.
yeah.
Yeah, so we actually started, there's three of us who founded the company. Two of us remain with the company now. And of those three, two of us were in Five Branches at the same time. And that was Rhiannon and I. I was a year ahead of her cohort-wise, but we were both making bone broth for private clients on the side without really knowing that the other was doing it. So Rhiannon was doing it and calling herself Kitchen Witch, and she was adding Chinese herbs to the bone broth, and she was taking orders via Facebook and then having people come and pick up from the fridge at Five Branches, like a true entrepreneur.
Right.
Just like side hustle. She'd have like names of people on the jars in the fridge at Five Branches, and then she'd put a thing up on the whiteboard in the student lounge, like, there's another batch coming off, get your orders in. And I saw that, but I was kind of busy in my own world. And at that time, my world was the place where Chinese medicine and Western fertility treatments intersect. We have a lot of that going on in this area, especially if you go over the hill in Silicon Valley. There's a lot of fertility clinics that are kind of world renowned in the Western way, and then they've brought in the Eastern medicine. So I was doing that and getting really involved in women's reproductive health and the idea of functional nutrition and the way it intersects with fertility. So I started making bone broth because it kept coming up in all of the research that I was doing. Like, they need collagen, they need a good source of collagen or gelatin, they need the micronutrients, the minerals, and then of course like the yin kidney aspect, which of course in Chinese medicine, when you're looking at fertility, that's one of the main components.
Right.
So I started making bone broth for my private clients, and a lot of bone broth for women postpartum, because in another life and in another side hustle at that time, I was a doula for women postpartum.
Oh, cool.
I was a doula and then working with them postpartum. So anyone who has worked with women postpartum knows that nourishment is absolutely foundational, and nourishment for the mother needs to be in place before that baby is out, because once that baby is out, you're just like, give me anything, and you're just trying to kind of get through.
It's so true. And just to interject with that point, so I have my daughter's going to be 3 in May, and yeah, so she's just a little sweetheart, and we did a home birth, and
Beautiful.
yeah, it was awesome. And when I remember I had like what you said, I had the food and the foods, essentially these nourishing foods, prepared, because I knew once that baby was out we were hitting the ground running, and I was like, I'm not going to have time to prepare meals. And bone broth was a big piece. Bone broth, lots of ginger, chicken bone soups. I mean, it was just nourishing foods through and through, and it made all the difference. I mean, my wife was essentially drinking and eating these foods like they were nectar. Like you could just see her just, like downing it. And she was like, "Oh my God, this is exactly what I need." I'm like, I know, it was so good. So totally, I can relate fully to what you're saying. I mean, I can speak to the testament that it's true.
Yeah. So that's how it started for me, because I was seeing that same thing. I was, walking into the homes of women who I had been with them at their birth, and I was preparing at their homes before they came home from the hospital, or in some cases it was a home birth. And so I was able to just be there, and I was coming with bone broth prepared already that I'd made, and then making them foods with it. Oh. And the power of it, like you just explained with your wife, it was so palpable and obvious, that it really started kind of a fire in me. And it was just this coalescing for me with the fertility, trying to get pregnant, with all these women trying to get pregnant, watching the birth is happening, it's real. And then watching this after portion, which in the States, of course, we often disregard. It's all about the baby. It's all about, getting back to work or getting back in shape or whatever BS, that's there. But I became really fascinated by the postpartum traditions of other cultures, and then how that intersects with modern medicine and functional medicine. And so I just was making bone broth as like a way to contribute. And what happened, this is back to the story of Kitchen Witch. What happened is that, like I said, Rhiannon's doing her thing over there. I'm doing my thing over here. And our third partner, Missy, was a new mom in Santa Cruz. And she saw Rhiannon advertising. I don't know how she even encountered it, but she saw it on Facebook. And she's like, I need bone broth. I'm going to help this. I'm going to order from this woman. So she's like, oh, wow. She's placing orders through Facebook Messenger. Like, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Right.
And Missy, being who she is, she's a logistical queen. She reached out and she said, hey, I want bone broth, but also, like, let's make this more legit. Like, I can help you.
Streamline this a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was on that same day that Missy reached out to Rhiannon, I reached out to Rhiannon and I said, hey, let's make this more legitimate. There's no point in both of us doing this, on the side. Let's come together and make it something more real. So Rhiannon, being the networker that she is, said, oh, these two people reached out. Instead of feeling like my little business is threatened by like people coming in and saying, you should do this better, or, let's make it bigger. She's like, let's bring everybody together. And so that fateful day, we all got together and we decided to make it real. And just a couple of months after, figuring out what it meant to get a kitchen permit and what it meant to put a safety seal on a ring. Yeah. Whole Foods reached out to us, and then New Leaf, which in the Santa Cruz area is our local organic market, reached out to us and they wanted it. And so we just scrambled and figured out how to create a legal retail product rather than a direct to consumer product. And it went from there because, if you're in the retail food scene, each store is a hub that then has arms out to other stores. And once you're in one of them, it's easier to get into more of them. Right. And so that's what we've been plugging away at for the last 4+ years now, is expanding that retail reach and, using all that Chinese medical education to crunch numbers on Excel spreadsheets. Right. So true. Yeah. To figure out, is it a legitimate business venture? So that's how we began. And here we plod along.
And it's awesome. I mean, to see you guys, to know you guys personally and just see it from its infancy with all of its quirks, and then to just see it now, where every time I go to Whole Foods, I'm like, there they are, like Kitchen Witch bone broth is just sitting on the shelf. It's pretty cool to see the big expanse of how you guys have rolled this out. But let's so there's some key threads, right? and I want to ask you some about just the entrepreneurial stuff kind of towards the end, but for now, I want to know, for the people listening, maybe that aren't in Chinese medicine, that are what you would call just mainstream demographic. When we talk about these traditional foods and the power that they carry, that have been around for thousands of years, talk to the group here about bone broth, what it is, why it's so vitally important, and what you've seen in the people that have been, drinking it consistently, and yourself included. I'm sure you have experience with it.
Yeah, I don't drink enough of it, believe it or not. It's like, anyway. But yeah, so what I love to say whenever I'm teaching a class on bone broth, or I'm speaking to a group of people about it, every single culture in the world, regardless of their nearness or farness from the equator, meaning, how hot or cold it is.
Yeah.
Every single culture has a broth tradition. It doesn't matter where you are, the tropics or in the polar region, there is a broth tradition. And that to me says something about that deep traditional inner knowing, and food and herbology, and that deep cross-cultural interknowing. That is something that really, really fascinates me. And I think it's something that we need to pay attention to in this modern world. So,
Agreed fully.
Yeah. Every culture has a broth tradition. Every culture takes the remnants of eating animals and boils that down into something that is thought to be medicinal and thought to be deeply nourishing. It doesn't really matter what kind of animal. Culturally, that you will take the bones, you will crack them open, and you will simmer them to pull nutrients out of them. Different cultures have ways of enhancing that. So in cultures that are near the sea, you might see them add seaweed to the broth, so that makes it more mineral rich. Many people are probably familiar with dashi, where you would add a kombu. That's in the Japanese tradition. Other cultures, like in more of the northern sort of Scandinavian regions, you'll see them add some kind of an acid. So whether that's a vinegar, or sometimes they'll even just throw in like spent citrus, whatever they have. And that acid is thought to help to break down the bones and pull more of the minerals and micronutrients out of the bones. But the tradition, the baseline tradition, is always taking the bones, taking the cartilage, all the things that you can't readily chew up and eat. So most of the muscle meat has been removed. The organ meat is not added into the broth. That's coveted. All of those bones, ligaments, tendons, and joints are all tossed in, and then they're simmered for a long period of time. Usually the smaller the animal, the shorter the simmer. And vice versa. Larger the animal, longer the simmer, so you get more and more out of it. And then that liquid is used to, in a lot of places, cook grains to make them more digestible, cook vegetables to make them more digestible, or simply had as a tonic, as you would a tea. And it looks different all over the world, but the foundation is really the same. So what you get from that is all of the collagen, all of the gelatin that was sort of trapped in the joint. That's one thing. Or trapped in the ligament that's too chewy. You get all of that collagen, all of that gelatin, and when you do that wide range of bones and joints, etc., you get different types of collagen, because there's more than one type of collagen. Our skin is made up of one, our ligaments are made up another, our hair is made up of another too, and so you get that wide variety, which is what makes up your body as a whole. So, and simmering for a long time obviously will pull more of that into the liquid that you use.
And they break it down, right? It's like type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. I mean, how many categories of the collagen? Is it 5? 4 or 5?
I think there's 5.
5, yeah.
I think there's 5.
That's
the most common one that we see, I believe, and sometimes I get it confused, but I believe that what we get the most of, especially with this massive trend, I'm sure that people out there listening have heard of and seen collagen all over the place.
Oh yeah, it's huge now.
It's everywhere, right? There's collagen pills, there's collagen chewies, there's collagen protein bars, there's collagen peptides, which is probably the most common. Thank you, Dave Asprey and Bulletproof for popularizing collagen peptides as a protein source, and also as a collagen replacement source. I believe that's type 1.
Yeah.
And when you see type 1 and when you see collagen peptides anywhere out in the world, what you're getting is collagen from the hide, typically, of cows.
Oh, I see.
So that is the same kind of collagen that makes up our own human skin. It is not the same type of collagen that makes up our human joints or our human ligaments. Maybe there are some components in there. I'm not fully on the collagen science, but I know that, for example, Vital Proteins, which is one of the really well-known collagen producers, they do a grass-fed collagen, peptides, gelatin, and a type 3 collagen. That type 3 collagen comes from the joints and the ligaments and the tendons of grass-fed cows. And that is marketed towards people who either have some kind of degenerative joint disease, maybe an autoimmune disease that's attacking the joints, and athletes who put a lot of stress in their bones and, in their joints and ligaments. And that's a type 3. So why that's important when you're looking for a collagen supplement or looking to add it or looking at bone broth, like which thing do I do? I think that, and obviously I'm biased, but I think that going to a whole food source is always going to be your best bet.
I agree.
And when you either make your own bone broth or you buy a legitimate bone broth like Kitchen Witch or like other ones that are out on the market, because there are other really great bone broth companies out on the market too, you'll know that you're getting that wide range of collagen. So we don't use any type 1 because I'm not adding like beef skin or beef hide to my bone broth. I'm adding joints. I'm adding ligaments. I'm adding, that whole food is going right in, just like your grandmother would, or like you would do at home if you're lucky enough to have a butcher in your area who'll save those parts for you. And what's so amazing is, for example, if you put in, I grew up in a Mexican household and my grandma would make pozole. And when she makes pozole, she's putting in whole pig feet. Or she'll get the butcher to cut them. It's like,
pozole. I love pozole.
It's the best.
It's so good.
It's absolutely the best. And when pozole, when it's made right, when it's chilled, it's like Jell-O. You have to like scoop it. I remember as a kid,
full-blown gelatin. It's like gelatin.
Full on. It's like a Jell-O mold, and you have to scoop it out to heat it up again.
Correct.
And so when you do that, when you're making your own broth, and say you were making a pig foot broth, or like for us, we do use like really nicely prepared beef feet in our beef broth, it dissolves to nothing. There's nothing. Except the bone in the middle. Like you put in a beef foot and then there's nothing. Like I'll never will I ever forget making my first large batch of Kitchen Witch. It went for 24 hours and I went back and I stirred it and I was like, okay, where's all the beef? Where are the feet? Like,
what happened?
Where are they? And I had this like full body reaction where I was like,
it's in there.
It's in there. Like I was just so taken with that. It was really amazing.
No, that's very cool. And this points to this idea that Chinese medicine adheres to, and I'm sure others do as well, but Chinese medicine, the old adage of like is good for like. They have that, and what that means, right, for people that don't know, is that if you have joint problems or you have things with the tendons, you're going to want to consume these foods because the constituent parts that make up that material is basically going to be assimilated by your body. And there's a lot of people that will talk shit on that and say like, no, that's not true. There's no scientific backing. But it's like, truth be told, thousands of years people have been doing this and having very good effect with these old traditional foods that are mineral rich, that are prepared slowly. And they are, the people that I've seen that consistently dialogue with these foods, they thrive. They do really well. And just, that was one of the coolest things I thought about what you guys were doing was, we know in the context when you're treating someone with acupuncture and herbs, right? That's the kind of main go-to thing you're doing in clinic. But I remember a number of the teachers, a lot of them Chinese, saying that like you see a person for an hour, maybe once a week or every 2 weeks. And he said there's all these hundreds of hours outside of here. You have no idea what they're doing. So you may just be putting out fires. And the thing with the broth, right? This immediately pushes it into the lifestyle. Like there's a food here that you should be consuming like a it's a supplement and potentially a foundation for your diet that can really replenish you in a completely different way. And that's why it's so good, to have these foods mixed in. So what have you seen with the people, and maybe your personal experience too? What have you noticed in the past when you started consuming bone broth, and then with the people that you were, the women that you were providing it to? What was some of the stuff you saw?
Yeah, well, just going back one second.
Of course, yeah.
Which is like all the people who say, the like treats like thing, and looking at traditional medicines and kind of poo-pooing them and saying, oh, there's not enough scientific evidence. Number one, like, give me a break.
Yeah, that's what I say.
So this entire time while we're waiting for scientific evidence, just don't do the thing that could potentially be really good for you.
Yeah, I know.
Because you're waiting. But anyway, the really exciting part about that is that there is scientific evidence now, because we're seeing this merging and this coalescing where science is saying, oh yeah, traditional medicines do have a lot to offer. Perhaps we didn't have the tools to quantify that before.
Correct.
But we know that acupuncture works scientifically,
right?
Air quotes,
right?
And so now collagen, and there's so much money in this industry that's pumping towards research to prove scientifically, so that we might have even more marketing towards us about why collagen is good and why your grandma was right when she put the pig foot in the broth and had you eat it.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So. What do we see? I mean, gosh, we've seen so many things over the years. And truth be told, anybody who has, started their own business where, there was no model, or, I mean, whatever, even just starting your own business.
Yeah.
There are days when it's really challenging to keep going, because it's a struggle.
Yes,
and
it is.
What has kept us going again and again have been the stories that we hear from people who have used Kitchen Witch. And I can remember some of the very first ones that we heard over and over, and things we still hear, is, my husband has cancer and he's in treatment for cancer. The only thing he wants is your broth. And that's the only thing that he can have.
Wow.
And I'll tell you two anecdotes with that. Number one, part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now is because my dad died of cancer, and I helped nurse him through that. And my dad, for all the TCM people out there, was the textbook picture of liver fire. Like, textbook. And he began with prostate cancer. Then he had ocular melanoma. Then he had metastatic liver cancer. So he fully followed the liver channel.
Right. God, that's crazy to think about. Wow.
Right. Yellow sclera.
Wow.
Flaring anger, red face when angry, love to palliate with alcohol.
Wow.
Not in an alcoholic way, but he was very European, and that was just sort of part of what he did, and it helped him through the day, and whatever. Maybe it was alcoholic, but I don't. Anyway, we don't need to go into that part.
Yeah.
But he was just this picture of liver fire and toxic heat.
Yeah.
And so that was another reason why I got into this. And so when I hear all these stories, I remember that when my dad was going through his final stages of cancer, he didn't want anything but soothing liquid foods.
Right.
Because when you're sick, I mean, what do you want? You don't want like a big cold salad.
Nope.
No.
Never.
Never. And so this is what we've heard again and again. I was sick. I had the flu. Your broth saved me. Can't tell you how many emails we've gotten about that.
Yeah.
I was sick. I ran to the store. I drank a whole jar of your broth. I was fine the next day. We hear that again and again. And then we hear about these people, breastfeeding moms who increase their breast milk supply by continually having this. But the most incredible story was gifted to me in a really serendipitous way. I was at this really amazing conference that happens at UCSF every year. It's held by Dr. Akhil Paliswamy, who wrote a book called The Paleo-Vedic Diet, which is where the paleo ideals and functional medicine ideals come in with Ayurveda.
Oh, that's cool. Wow.
It's super cool. And he runs this center called the IHH at UCSF, which is one of those to me, beacons of hope for Western medicine in the future, integrating all of this that we're talking about. Anyway, so a functional medicine practitioner there came up to me because I was wearing a Kitchen Witch shirt. And she said, I have to tell you this story about this little girl. And she was a functional medicine pediatrician actually in the Santa Cruz area. And she had a family come to her. They were a Chinese family, immigrants here, and they had like a 3-month-old baby. And that baby was in full body, head to toe eczema, cracking, bleeding, peeling, full autoimmune response eczema that was, they just couldn't get it under control. And the baby had food allergies to every possible thing that they had tried, even her own mom's breast milk. And mom had eliminated everything, and she was still reacting to the breast milk. She had reacted really severely to a soy formula, and nothing was working. And this functional practitioner, I mean, they were feeling like their baby was going to die from an autoimmune response, and the manifestation was eczema.
Right.
All over. Can you imagine having an infant covered in eczema who's uncomfortable? I mean, it's just horrifying. But anyway, they gave her Kitchen Witch beef broth, and it was the only thing she could digest. And it calmed the autoimmune response enough that they were able to finally incorporate other foods along the line. But it was Kitchen Witch broth that baby survived on for a period of months because it was the only thing that didn't cause that reaction.
Wow.
And that to me is not saying that Kitchen Witch itself is the same. That to me is saying when you make a legit bone broth, it's going to allow your body to heal and seal, because that's just an autoimmune response that baby was having, right? And that for whatever reason, her gut was fully flared up, and it needed that varied collagen and gelatin to go in there and coat and coat and coat consistently enough to tamp down that autoimmune fire that was going on.
Yeah.
And that story was huge for me, because you can become really disconnected to what is actually happening out in the world with your product. You know?
Easy to do.
Yeah, it's easy to do. And so we've heard that, over and over and over. And what you said a minute ago about all these hours in between when we see our patients. Yeah. This is what I say all the time when I treat, or not when I treat, because I don't actually treat individuals anymore, but when I teach my classes, I say, look, I can't guarantee that you are going to take the supplements that I recommend to you. I can't guarantee you're going to meditate. I can't guarantee you're going to exercise. I can't guarantee you're going to go and show up for all of your acupuncture appointments, but I can guarantee that you're going to eat.
Right.
Start with the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah. Well said.
And that is the one thing that I know people are going to do. Yeah. And if you can manipulate that for the individual, there's no right answer for everybody, but if you can manipulate that, you make incredible headway.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly right. I mean, a big piece of my platform is food is medicine, and trying to get that notion into people's heads, because what we see, and this was as you were talking, it's just pumping through my head, which is we live in an American culture. There's so much processed food. There's so much garbage in terms of food colorings, flavor additives, and what they call natural flavoring, which is basically just chemical, decoctions that go in and trigger things in our brain. It's this very fake food. It doesn't have any real substance. It's lacking nutrients, and this is the antithesis to that. This is pretty much the opposite. This is real sourced, actual real beneficial food, and you guys are putting it in glass. Which is even cooler, which takes that little, ratchets it up even, that makes it that much more clean of a product without all the garbage that plastic, carries. Even if it's BPA free, there's still just plastic's just not a great thing. And you guys...
BPA is just one of the things that they've found.
Correct.
That is challenging to the system, that is poisonous to the system. That's just one of the things that they've found. Yeah. There's a whole movement that's like BPA free is not enough. Yeah. which is true. Yeah. And, we've been through the ringer on it. It is not easy to have a cold product in glass. Yeah. Glass is heavy.
I know.
Glass doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. Glass doesn't even have the best carbon footprint.
Yeah.
Thin plastics have a better carbon footprint in some respects.
Yeah.
But you have to look at the triple bottom line of everything.
Yes.
You know, so that and you know that I would say if there's anything that's been a big inhibitor for us in terms of growth in the way that you would see a food company grow in a more traditional sense, it's been glass.
Yeah.
Because we just won't compromise on it. I would rather not make it.
Yeah. God bless you for being a hard ass about it, because I think it's when you, I mean, it's difficult. I know you guys have probably hit a lot of challenges, like you were just saying, right? There's some logistical problems that don't make it easy to do.
Yeah.
But in the end, right, it's non-porous. There's nothing is going to leach into the broth. And especially if you've got people, when you guys are approaching this as food as medicine, which is beautiful, and people are using it as a medicine per se.
Yeah.
And with that, it's like you might as well make it as clean as possible so that they're getting exactly what they need without anything extra that could tax the system further.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it any harder on the body. The other piece I want to swing back to that you were talking about, which is the gut health piece, right? Which is fascinating. And I've when I teach courses and stuff, and I'm talking to people, I reference things like the GAPS diet and the effects of broth and collagen, what that does to the intestinal lining. But maybe you can speak to that a little bit to the people that aren't hip to that idea and don't know about gut health, collagen, these really mineral-rich foods, and what that does to the gut, and how that relates to maybe autoimmune and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So, by now, anyone listening has heard about the microbiome. Anyone listening has heard about gut health.
Yep.
That is a ubiquitous term and theme now, and it's in medicine, and it's in food. It's in your grocery store. You'll see it there. You'll see it everywhere. And there's a legitimate reason for it, and it's not just a fad or a cliche that's going on. This is what medicine will focus on moving forward as one of the main themes.
Yep.
So, everybody's heard like the human body is like a donut. Everything from your mouth to your anus is actually exposed to the outside world, right? Because we put the food in, and then our body does all of these varying discerning processes from the mouth all the way down to the large intestine, where it takes out the things that it wants to create the body and pulls them in through the gut lining, basically in through the gut lining.
Yep.
And into the bloodstream, right? And then everything else it doesn't want passes through the body, or everything else that it doesn't have the chance to take nutrients out of passes through the body, and that of course depends on the individual. So the idea that is kind of underlying all of this is that our guts are extremely stressed by a range of factors, by foods that are irritating to us, by environmental factors that might be either on our food or in the air. Glyphosate being a really big
That's one of the big offenders right there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that will come to you in the form of your food. That will come to you in the form, because of course glyphosate is a water-soluble toxin. It's going like this, and for people who are not seeing, I'm circling my arms in the air like a weirdo. Glyphosate is water-soluble, so it's sprayed onto the food, it washes off in the water, it sits in the soil, evaporates up into the clouds, and it rains back down on us. And because it has a very long half-life, this cycle continues over and over and over. So not to freak everybody out, but even if you're eating organic, you're getting glyphosate in the form of atmospheric assault.
This is what we call atmospheric toxins as a result of how nature processes everything, right? The circle of life is very real.
Yes. So the point being, how does this affect gut health? It's just sort of another modern day assault that's happening in our guts, because again, our guts are taking all the things that are coming in and discerning them into what we want and what we don't want. But what happens when we spend, our lives as modern humans being assaulted over and over by things like this, including stress, your own internally mind-generated stress, that gut becomes irritated and it begins to puff up. This is inflammation. And all of that puffing up actually creates these microscopic separations between the cells in your gut. And when those junctions, there are tight junctions and there are gap junctions in your gut cells, and those junctions are extremely important in discerning, pulling out what you need, sucking it right into your bloodstream and allowing it to do its work. But when they puff up, those junctions widen and things go into them that should not be able to go into them. Large particles of protein that have not been broken down the way that they should, bacteria and viruses, environmental toxins. So those things that would have gone through an extreme filtration system are now passing through those widened junctions or those broken junctions. And what sits right behind that first layer, you know, the cell wall of your gut is simply one cell thick.
Which is so crazy to think about when you...
One cell.
Yeah. Well, and just to give a reference to that, when people talk about, you know, they've talked about some jellyfish have like their little membrane is about a cell thick. And you know how thin that is. Like when you've seen them, you know, in like the aquarium, they're just, it's like this beyond paper thin, right? It's just
it's
so
like
incredibly...
I think they say it's like half a human hair.
Yeah. It's just...
It's insane.
Yeah. Very thin.
You know, creator, whatever you want to believe in, that created the intelligence of the human gut. We need that because when we were digesting really challenging to digest foods, lots of fiber and things like that, we needed as much possible surface area to get the nutrients out of what we were eating. Right. But now because that barrier is compromised, right on the underside of that first layer, that single layer, the only one there is our bloodstream and our immune system. Yeah. And that's good because, right, we want those nutrients to go suck right in and start doing their work and circulate around your body. But that means the same thing for those large particles of protein, for those environmental toxins, for all of your stress hormones. They're going right in. And they're going right into your bloodstream, and then they're irritating your body as a whole. So that's like a whole big discussion about autoimmune, degenerative disease, blah, blah, blah. But focusing on that gut layer, that's where it all begins, right? That's our interface with the outside world. Right. So we have to do everything that we can to stop compromising that. Yes. To stop compromising that membrane. I don't want to just say microbiome because that's one component. Yeah. The physiological membrane is what's compromised. Yeah. Right. We need to do everything we can to stop compromising that. First off. Second off, we have to repair. Yeah. And third, we have to maintain. Yep. So the way that foundational foods like bone broth work are that whole system in your body, that all of those squishy parts of you, you know, in your large intestine, that's all made up of collagen. Mm-hmm. But it's very irritated, red, inflamed collagen. Yes. And imagine those gap junctions are all wide and they need help to close back up and to cool down. Collagen and gelatin coat them. Yeah. And they will temporarily seal those widened junctions, which allows each of those millions and trillions of junctions to be more discerning. Yes. And so I always talk about it like a fire, right? With a fire, when you're in a full flare, and again, think about them all puffed up, it's raging. Then we tamp it down, we tamp it down, we tamp it down, we tamp it down. Maybe there are some embers left. Right. We keep tamping down until you kill the embers. And that's when you get to maintenance, where you're no longer inflamed. But to get there, we have to be consistent, which is why traditional cultures have broth all the time. Yeah. It's not one pill they take a day. Right. It's integrated with the way that they eat. Yes. It's integrated with the way their culture works. It's just what they do. And so that consistency cools and heals and seals. And that's what we have the opportunity to do now in like whatever flavor you want. You can get like a matcha flavored collagen. You know, you can have make your homemade pho with your bone broth and consistently do it. But that's really the key with the microbiome and the gut health aspect of it, is you need to be consistent and you need to think about it not as just like tossing in a bunch of probiotics, right, which can be helpful, but think about your poor, hot, all irritated,
of course,
gut lining.
Of course. I mean, no, and it's a big piece, right? So what you're talking about, I'm so on board with on every front. And it, the other way I've heard this described, and which I thought was kind of a cool analogy, they said, like, if you've got holes in a wall, you have to take spackle and you've got to fill the cracks, that the collagen and these mineral rich collagen like foods go into the gut, and kind of it's like spackle, right? Mm-hmm. The only thing is, like what you're saying is, you fill in those gaps, but over time, right, the body, through irritants, through things, diet, stress, there's all these things that happen, right? The onslaught of life in general, you have to, refill that spackle. You've got to put those pieces in there. And it's really interesting, the other piece that you touched on, because, the eczema piece that you spoke about earlier, people know this who were, close to me, but, my daughter had just like that baby, severe, really bad. And, we addressed it through various different ways, and some allopathic, some Eastern, and she's doing amazing now. But when we were talking to these Stanford doctors about this, because she had it so bad, they said it was just really, really, really bad. And she was, from age 4 months to 7 months, she was like that baby. Just, it was.
Oh my God.
It was.
Exactly.
I know exactly. It was horrible. It was like the worst patch of my life to date, for sure. My wife too. It sucked. But one of the things that the Stanford doctors were talking about, right? Because some of the doctors I was pushing, I was like, so do you guys need to check her gut, like the gut health? And a lot of the doctors, it was just over their head. They're like, what? Like, no. And then some were like, yeah, actually, that's a good point. And it was, so it was frustrating, right? To have like MDs where you're like, oh my God, I'm not a medical doctor, and I'm not I never hold my position like, oh, I'm superior. But it was frustrating to be educating an MD sometimes about the most basic idea. And then other times they were on board, and I was like, good, I like you. that you're. Yeah. But one of the things they talked about was, so you were saying, the gut lining, there's this, the gaps essentially in the gut, right? And it goes into the bloodstream, and it causes these autoimmune responses, and it can cause allergies and all these crazy things. And what they're finding now with the research around eczema and these things where kids develop these crazy allergies. Mm-hmm. So when kids are exposed in that membrane, right, from the TCM, right, the Wei Qi is totally exposed. What they're finding is when these food proteins get in through the skin and go directly into the bloodstream. So like say peanut, right, or sunflower seeds or whatever the thing is, when the skin is exposed when they're babies and their immune systems are still developing, and they get these foods, say, mom's eating an egg sandwich and a little piece of egg falls and just touches the baby's skin. When it goes right into the bloodstream and it doesn't have the chance to pass through the digestive tract, the body registers it as something foreign and develops an allergy. So like this permeable membrane on the skin, when kids are in that stage, if they have eczema, like the thing that they're saying now is you have to be hypervigilant about foods touching their skin. Like that's one of the things, because if it goes in that way, they're going to get the allergy. But it's really interesting to see when you're talking about the gut lining, the same thing happens, right? It's this permeability thing that you don't want.
Right.
Skin needs to be intact, right? Ideally. And then the gut, keeping that gut lining intact, not permeable. And like you said, it really points to lifestyle. There has to be a certain point where we start inoculating ourselves with these foods that are collagen rich, mineral rich, so the body has a baseline to work from. And I think that's one of the trickiest things to get into people's head. Like you said, right? It's not a single pill. It's not like a one shot does it. It's you have to be making these foods. So you're obviously making a product that people can consume. They can buy anywhere, Whole Foods now, in all these amazing flavors. What's it look like when you're teaching on this? Are you encouraging people, just to buy your product? Are you encouraging them to make it? Like, how do you frame the context of getting these foods into your diet on the long-term scale?
Yeah. Well, okay. First of all, you just really got me thinking, buzzing in my brain about Wei Qi.
Yeah.
Because, Wei Qi, we think of it on the outside, but what about this idea, like I was saying, about, the human donut?
Yeah.
What about these compromised digestive systems that were not seen in the way that they are seen now? They weren't seen that way when, the Chinese medicine that we know is being formulated and documented and all of that. like, what about Wei Qi on the inside? Now that we don't have this discernment in the same way, the physiology, the organ systems are not working in the way that they
Correct.
should be in a lot of people. We shouldn't have kids who react because an egg drops on them.
Right.
Like, what's going on there? Like that just really got me thinking. But
oh no, it's boggling. I mean, and just to give people that are listening that are not TCM Chinese medicine people, so what Magali and I are talking about when we're talking about Wei Qi, there's this, and I've mentioned this in another podcast, but just if this is people are listening just to this one, Wei Qi is this idea that it's this layer between your skin and your muscle that acts as a buffer between you and the outside world. So it protects you from external pathogens, so bacteria that could come through the skin where you pick up a cold or being exposed to elements, right? Wind, cold, damp, heat. Mm-hmm. And it also has an emotional piece too, right? The Wei Qi of how well we interface with the external world and emotions coming into us and out of us. So there's all these protocols and ways to strengthen Wei Qi, this idea of this protective layer. But yeah, as you're talking about it, it's like, right, it spins the wheels, right, in a bunch of different directions to think about this idea. And the other piece too that I always kind of drew back to in Chinese medicine is the tie-in connection, right? Lung and spleen. Yep. The spleen is just a conglomerate of lymph tissue, which regulates our immune system. So there's this internal connection too on the inside. Lungs, right? Skin, mm-hmm. exterior. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could nerd out on Chinese medicine and all this stuff for a long time.
And then you think about the asthma-eczema connection.
Correct.
Which is just, in Western medicine, it's so well known.
Yes, it happens all the time.
Often, it happens all the time. Kids,
mm-hmm.
My sister was one of those kids.
Yep.
She doesn't have asthma anymore. She still has eczema, but she was an asthma-eczema kid.
Mm-hmm.
That was just the way that it was. We would go in and she would get her inhalers, and then we would go in and she would get her steroid cream.
Right.
And it was like, it's just these things come together. We don't know why.
Right. And they're starting to figure it out why, right?
Right.
bit by bit. And so anyway, yeah. Back to your your teaching piece. All right. I know we could spin out for a long time, but I know there's a lot here in terms of just, it's a big topic, gut health and all this stuff. It's huge. Yeah, it's a big topic.
Yeah, well, but again, and I told you this when we were talking before, which is I'm so interested in figuring out a way to truly bring Chinese medicine theory and functional medicine mm-hmm. together so that our TCM community can so brilliantly bring these things together and shine even a brighter light on what we're learning with modern medicine and with functional medicine, and in using our ancient tools to interpret it, because they are still legitimate. It's just that we need our TCM people to be thinking about, not just in the classic way, but with the modern research that we've got going on now, and with food as medicine, and
right.
Like all of the environmental stuff. We need our TCM practitioners to be thinking in that way too.
Yep.
So I'm just so interested in the way those worlds intersect. But anyway, back to the teaching thing. So I teach a lot of classes on autoimmune. I teach a lot of classes on anti-inflammatory living, and I teach a lot of classes on just straight up bone broth making. Mm-hmm. And when I'm teaching those classes, my number one goal is to empower people that when they leave, they feel like they can go home and do this on their own.
Yeah.
Because
that's really good.
I don't want people to feel like they need to rely on complicated and yes, expensive outside sources to form a foundation for their health. It's just not true. You don't need to rely on that.
Right.
Making bone broth is, I don't know if I would say it's easy, but it's simple.
Yes. Agreed.
It's very simple. It does take time. It does, the number one thing I hear in classes is, my husband doesn't like the way it smells when I'm cooking the broth, and he won't let me cook it at home. Can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
Yeah.
Not always in that voice, but
yeah.
People don't like to do it because it's kind of stinky. People are afraid of leaving their stove on for overnight or 24 hours. But I in all my classes I do demonstrations. So I teach in a cooking in a teaching kitchen. So I'm able to show people right then and there, teach them about what to ask for at the butcher when you go to get bones, how to collect bones from all of the meals that you have and freeze them, and then how to ultimately make your own bone broth and then do it safely, because if you're doing a larger batch, the jarring process can be messy and it can be dangerous. So I teach people how to do that and really empower them to do it at home. And likewise with all of the, seemingly complicated foods that, you hear paleo, you hear autoimmune paleo, you hear keto, you hear walls, you hear gaps, you hear all these different things. My goal is always to show people like, look, those are all different names for the very same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
And all that matters is that we get you this foundational knowing. And then from that foundational knowing, you individualize it.
Right.
With trial and error on yourself. So that's ultimately the goal, is to make sure that people understand that there's a lot of marketing out there. Yeah. But it really comes down to you in your kitchen, interacting with some food, and then eating it.
Yeah.
It's
a simple formula. It really is. That's the trickiest part that I've found is people are, because I'll teach at the various different capacities, but I'll teach at the Natural Food Co-op. I'll teach, these places in Sacramento, some of the places where I work. I'll teach on food, and it's amazing how people are interested about food, right? Because we all eat. I'm always posting stuff on social media of the meals I make, and people always are, it gets a lot of hits because they're just like, they see the food and they're like, oh my God, it looks so good.
Recipe, please.
Right. So people are into food, but then there's often this big wall that's hit where it's like, wait, but I have to do stuff to make it, to get this into my body. I have to work at it a little bit. And that's, it's so different now. There's a lot of people who love to cook. And a lot of people who either don't know how, which is one of the things. This is one of the biggest. Like when I assess people and I'm working with them at the lifestyle level, it's one of my key questions. I'm like, do you cook and do you know how to? And if they don't, it's immediately like, wow. So this is a big area of leakage in your life force. In my estimation, it's like if you don't have a baseline to prepare your food or to make these foods and hopefully make them tasty, right? So you actually enjoy them and it's not just totally shitty to eat something that doesn't taste good. Yeah. That's a very real thing of getting people into the mindset of being willing and able to prepare food, right? To make it, to have their hands in it, because there's something that happens, right? Outside of, yes, it's good for you. It's really amazing when people start making their own food, what it does for them. I've had bad days where I make a meal and it's like, that's my time to unwind. That's my time to cut stuff. Smells good. The flavors kick up. But a lot of people don't, it's not a part of their lifestyle, or they have an aversion to cooking because they just, they never learned or don't like it. Never
learned. They didn't have it in their house, or they feel intimidated by it.
That's a big one.
I encounter that a lot with the student population that I have, and then with the client population that we have at Kitchen Witch, and with our gut reset and all of that. That's what I encounter a lot is people who either they are so sick or food has made them so sick because they're in whatever state that they are afraid and feel disempowered about cooking for themselves or choosing the right foods. And so they come to me and they ask me these questions that, I have to sort of slow myself down and have compassion, because they ask me questions where I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
You can answer that question for yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, you can have this food. And if you don't know, you got to try it, but people get so disempowered because, again, like I said, there's so many names for things out there. Should I be keto? Is this keto? Like, how many times have I heard, is this keto? Is this paleo? Is this? And it's like, I feel a lot of compassion for it, because there's so much intersection of marketing, wellness stuff, medical stuff, and then the very foundational fact that a lot of people that we're seeing and a lot of people out there feel like crap.
Yeah, that's right. That's the bottom line. People aren't feeling well.
They don't feel well in whatever way, which is why I love that you call it lifestyle medicine, because we know that it's not one pill. It's not going to be the supplement regimen that you're on that solves, the strange nagging sense of dissatisfaction that you have that requires a talk with your spouse.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Fully.
Like it's all interconnected, and that doesn't need to be complicated. It actually, for me, simplifies the situation
Tremendously.
Yeah. So back to that whole disempowerment thing. I think that it is such an alchemy that happens when people touch back in with their food.
Yes.
And become familiar again with their food. And what was and is this other part of what I do is, it's so funny because like I'm such a tangible person. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of trouble in Chinese medicine school because a lot of it felt so ethereal and esoteric and like
sometimes,
this, the like even the idea of like Wei Qi or whatever, it was very hard. And like put the needle here and then the magic happens. Like, which is why I don't needle people. I love being needled. Magic happens.
Yeah.
But it wasn't my thing. I'm so like, this is the food. Eat the food.
Yeah, totally.
Like, see what happens with the food.
I'm the same way.
Yeah. And so what I started doing, again, I made the bone broth for people. I put it in their face and like watched them react to it. And so I started cooking for people, doing the nutritional consulting, and then private chefing for people because I would advise people, do this and this and this thing, and they wouldn't do it because all the above reasons that we stated, they were intimidated, they didn't know where to get the stuff, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, I'm gonna do it. So I just did it for them, right? And so
I'm gonna take care of this for you right now, so there's no more mistakes, right?
Yeah, and then eat it. And so I have, I have a couple clients I still do this with, and then I have a sous chef who's really amazing, who I've trained to do this, and she does this for my other clients here in Santa Cruz, where she's actually going into their homes and she's cooking and preparing the things that I've told them that they need to eat, right? And that's not doable for every household by any means. And it also still removes the people from their food. It gives them a little bit of a stepping stone because they'll come in and they'll see Mia, who's my sous chef, who's amazing, in their cooking, and they'll say, oh, we're putting that in there? Why are you putting that in there? Or why are those nuts soaking over there? What's going on? And so they touch back in and then they get more familiar with their food. But I think that is something we need people to do more and more of, is just get in the kitchen, get a cookbook that you love, and cook from it. Mm-hmm. Get one that's not intimidating. There's a great one by Nom Nom Paleo. I have
that book. Yeah.
The Ready, Set, Go. If anybody feels intimidated by cooking deeply nourishing meals, get that book. It's like, she makes it so easy. Like, you have 20 minutes. Here's 50 recipes that you can do in 20 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nourishing, paleo style foods. So,
do you follow Michael Pollan's work at all?
Yes.
So he's got he's got the Netflix specials. He's done the talks. He's got the books. But I mean, that's a big thread of what he's talking about, right? It's like, get back to your food. Get back to this. And outside of that, right, this is the piece that I find interesting about food and why it's so awesome if you can get even moderately good at it in cooking is, that the psychology, right, what we were talking about, mental health and gut health. That link is big, right? That's a huge thing. And what they've found is, right, they've done research around this. People digest food better. They assimilate nutrients better when they eat food in a social and loving context. So people are like smiling and talking and, sharing their day, and they're eating food. For one, emotionally, it's just great, right? To sit around a table, talk about your day, do your things. And it's like this extra layer, right, that makes you healthier. It's fundamentally. So I think it's like when you open this door to food, the whole real actual foods that you've made, invariably, typically you want to share them. Whenever I make a good meal, if my wife and baby go to bed early, I'm always like calling one of my buddies. I'm like, hey bro, you want to come over? I just cooked up this like amazing thing, like there's leftovers. I don't want to eat this by myself because I want to watch somebody enjoy it, So there's always that element too. I think that it addresses multiple things at once, getting your food. It's like mentally good for you. Socially, it's good for you.
Yeah.
It adds to this larger health piece, but that's why I just love what you guys, have been doing. I mean, it's putting a real, actual nutrient dense food out for people, and it gives them an experience like, oh, wow, this is real food. right?
Yeah.
This is a real actual thing. This is what food is supposed to taste like. It should be nutrient dense. It should be grounding when you eat it. There should be a, what do they call it? The umami, you know, or what's that word where they, like when you eat food, it's just like, oh my God, like that's.
I don't know what the word for that is because umami is a particular taste, but I want to know what
maybe that's it. I might have it wrong. Yeah. I definitely might have it wrong. Yeah. But they talk about that, right? There's just that element of real actual food, which is why it's so beautiful. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that? Because if not, I have some other stuff I wanted to ask about.
The one thing I want to say about that is, you know, I'm sure that there are people that hear that and have heard that in different contexts. Mm-hmm. This whole, you know, like take the time, touch on your food, learn to cook, and they feel like, God dang it. Like, when am I going to have time to do that? Like, how does that fit into my life? Like, I get off late, I do this and I do that.
I'm busy. Yeah.
I'm busy and, you know, I've got a baby or whatever it is. And I fully hear that. And the idea for me is it doesn't need to be, because I guess I get a lot of people, a lot of my clientele, they want to do it all and they want to do it all quickly because a lot of times people are coming to us and they're already in either a disease state or an extreme stress state, or they're somewhere where they're like, I need to do it. Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Like, give me all the stuff. I want to do it and I want to do it right. I get that a lot in my clientele. And I have to have them take a step back and be like, let's talk about how to make this work for you.
Yeah.
Some to most of the time.
Right.
Let's start there.
The majority, right? Yeah. Yeah. Get the broad strokes.
Let's let this become a gradual integration. And I say this again to my clients all the time. Like, look, I'm not looking for the silver bullet or however you say. I'm not looking for the one thing.
Right.
I'm looking for this relationship to be long.
Yeah.
We're going to take our time.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this gradually so that it becomes integrated into your life rather than a one-off kind of thing.
Totally.
So just saying that so that people don't feel like that extreme pressure to learn to cook and make it taste good and do all of that right away. It's just touch in, start where you are.
Yeah.
You know? And if for me, it's like I cook for people all the time. I cook with people all the time, but I don't cook for myself or my fiance all the time. And he's just like, okay, I'll pick something up for dinner because I'm tired of cooking or I'm tired of interacting with food because I do it all day. And so I have to remind myself to nourish myself because I'm a busy person too.
Yeah.
So like the way that I did that and reinvigorated myself this weekend, actually it was really random, but I made a kvass.
Oh, I love like the beet kvass.
Well, interestingly,
different. Is it not beet?
I made a kvass with carrot and turmeric, raw turmeric and ginger and black pepper. And then I made my own whey from sheep's yogurt.
Wow.
So it was this little thing that I haven't fermented in so long and I haven't cooked in my own kitchen for so long. And it just was a little spark and I decided to follow it because I knew kvass is not a time intensive thing.
No.
And I felt so invigorated by it. I was like, I like to do this.
Yeah.
I forgot. I like to do this for me.
Yes. So important. So, and Magali, for the people that don't know what kvass is, tell them. Because people are like, what the hell is kvass? You know?
Okay, kvass is a fermented drink, and it's attributed to Eastern European, mainly Russian cultures. It was typically made with old stale rye bread that you would kind of mush up and then add some salt and add some water and allow that to ferment. Because I am, gluten and grain free, I didn't do it with rye bread. I did it instead with a starchy veggie. So my starchy veggie was carrot because carrots are really nice right now in the wintertime. They're really nice and orange and fibrous. And so I got a bunch of carrots and I grated them up. And they act as the carbohydrate or sugar source when you cultivate the bacteria. So basically, let's if you've never done kvass, how to make this simple. It's like kombucha, except there's no sugar added. Instead of sugar, you're using a starchy veggie, and that's what the bacteria is going to feed off of.
Yeah.
Whereas with kombucha, you would add a SCOBY, which
Yep.
is the like mushroomy mother thingy that makes the bacteria for the
Yep.
kombucha. With kvass, instead, you add some whey. And I say it and like sounds so complicated. I made my own whey from some sheep's yogurt I got from a local farm. I got some sheep's yogurt and I just separated the whey out of it, which is incredibly simple. And I made kvass. So it's gonna ferment.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pour off all the veggies, and then I'm going to let it carbonate a little bit. And so it'll be a fizzy,
It's delicious.
fermented drink that I just love so much.
Kvass is amazing. I made kvass. I was using the kefir grains, the back when I was in school, and I was making beet kvass consistently, it kind of like as a blood tonic.
Yes.
And it was amazing. And what I always find, when you were talking about that, just as a cool side note, when I finally got that. So the SCOBY, right? Symbiotic culture of bacterial yeast. Like that's the nasty, slimy, alien-looking mushroom brain that sits on top of the kombucha.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's so gross looking. But when I started to get that, I remember thinking when I was learning about this stuff, I was like, why do you put sugar? We don't process sugar. It's like not good for us. Until I realized, I was like, oh, it eats it, and then essentially it defecates probiotics out. Like that's what it does, And I was like, oh my god, that's really interesting and kind of gross. Kind of gross,
so gross.
But, yeah, kind of nasty, but incredibly good for us, right? So, yeah, kvass. Yeah. Okay, well, so the question now, I wanted to ask you about was kind of the entrepreneurial side of this because. Myself going to Chinese medicine school, having a background in art, I'm much more of a right brain, artistic, intuitive type, and learning the business side of things has like been a slow and laborious process. Mm-hmm. So for you being plugged into this scene where you're learning like, holistic medicine, Chinese medicine, and then moving into kind of an entrepreneurial stance and in starting a food product and moving through that, how have you just navigated the business side of this? And like built it out, like what's that process been like going from, because you have to have a business sense to do Chinese medicine as well. But I just want to hear that a little bit about like how that's unfolded.
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly light years away from, starting your own clinic and learning how to market yourself individually that way and continually bring people in and how to do all that billing. Like that's a whole different side of this that I didn't learn and I think is its own major challenge. I never expected to need to know so much about freight routes up and down the West Coast. I never expected I'd need to know about lift gates on trucks and pallet jacks and forklifts and, minimum orders for vinyl labels and, just so many details. And then not even getting into like figuring out what your margin is when you add in a distributor and, you need a broker in the natural food industry. And like, what does 5% off the top look like? And,
Right.
all of that. So it has been, it has been at times I've found myself elated and I have fully found myself like literally in the fetal position on the floor crying.
Fair enough. Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah. And multiple times on all of those ends and then everything in between. Most days are somewhere in between, thankfully.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, it's when you are creating a product, whether that is a service that you're offering in the way that a lot of, practitioners do, or whether that is an actual product, when you're doing something like this and refusing to compromise on your integrity, there is this thread that pulls me along no matter what the challenge is, because I know that at a fundamental level, what I'm doing is good.
Yeah.
And I know that at a fundamental level, what I'm doing is right, at least for the moment.
Yeah.
Everything else is the noise of the day. And that doesn't mean that I know that Kitchen Witch is going to like prevail and become the bone broth company of the United States. And we're going to like sell for millions of dollars and
Right.
it'll all be 100% worth it. I don't know that.
Yeah.
We can't know that. But I know that what I'm doing is right. I know that what I'm doing is good. And that is what pulls me through. But it has been a massive learning experience. And I think that some of the most challenging parts, as with any entrepreneurial business, is income. It's finances. It's making all of these different parts work so that the business is running, and then you have to turn around and say, what about me? Like, I need to have the money to make the kvass that re-inspires me to then continue on in this coming week, because I had this little dose of inspiration and self-care and self-love. Like I need to, it all is symbiotic, right? Yeah. So I think that I'm learning every day about it. I love to explore and talk about it, and I am in no way an expert on how to do this kind of thing, because at the same time, this is a burgeoning industry. This is very new in what's happening right now. The way that alternative medicine is feeding into the wellness world. Yes. Right? Because wellness is one thing. Alternative medicine is another thing it feeds in. Then the wellness world feeds into the grocery world now, which is amazing. Yeah. Like, so amazing.
Yeah. Things have changed quite a bit. Yeah.
Things have changed a lot. It used to be that alternative medicine and wellness fed into the supplement section of your natural grocery store. Right. And you would go to the supplement section to look for those things that you need. But now it's all over the store. Yeah. And now grocery stores, natural grocery stores, are becoming hubs for people. They have, like you said, your co-op has a teaching classroom, it sounds like. A
big one.
Ours, and ours has this great teaching classroom too. And we have wellness practitioners and alternative medical practitioners and MDs coming in and teaching.
Wow.
In a food mecca. Like, what's going on, right? So this is what's happening in the moment. And so being in that moment as an entrepreneur here, it takes a lot of adaptation, and it takes a lot of looking at the marketing and seeing where we fit in and how we can do it in a way that feels integrous, rather than just trying to sell somebody a product, which is what you would typically do in a business, obviously. Yeah. So that's kind of the world that my brain lives in most of the time, because I've never been salesy. Yeah. I abhor salesy. Yeah. I don't even like to do demos for the company. I've never wanted to do demos. Yeah. It's a big part of selling a food product. You're in the store, you're on the ground, you're doing demos. I can't do it. It feels too salesy. Like, I need to be teaching in the teaching classroom, and I'll do a tasting demo of our broth. Right. But it's in the context of teaching, because the salesy part just, Yeah.
Understandable. I mean, I can relate very much so. It's, for me to do that as well would be difficult. I'm pretty personable, and I'm like quick on my feet and stuff, but it's not my favorite. I'm like you. If I'm teaching, that is the sales pitch, right? It's like, then they're like, oh, this is interesting. I want in, and that's way easier to me. Exactly. So, well, that's really good to hear, though. And I really appreciate, at a personal level, that you guys have done this, that you've gone down this road to make such an awesome food product that's accessible and in glass, and it has interweaved, your higher education. There's a lot of amazing things here, but I also understand the logistical reality of doing something at this scale with, how many kitchens do you guys have?
Kitchens?
Yeah, like where you're actually preparing. Do you have one primary one?
We have one bigger production facility, and then we have one kitchen, shared kitchen, we share with other artisanal food businesses, where we do all of the soup making for our gut reset program, which is the smaller direct arm of Kitchen Witch, whereas that's not in the retail space. In terms of, like it's through our distribution channels, Whole Foods
Right.
and the New Leaves and all of those organic markets of the world.
Yeah.
That happens in our larger production facility. And then the direct to consumer gut reset stuff happens in our smaller kitchen facility.
Very cool.
And my office is above that, and I get to look down through my little window,
overseeing everything.
yeah, and watch my staff as they make thousands of gallons of soup.
Yeah. Well, and just so people know, just to give a little bit on the product, how many different types of broth do you sell? I know you do beef and chicken. Do you do something else also? You do fish,
So
right?
we do our beef. So it's a organic grass-fed beef. We do our organic and pastured chicken. We do our organic turkey, and then we have what we call our almost veggie broth, which is a mushroom-based broth that we add grass-fed beef gelatin to.
Okay.
And that is, it's not a huge seller, but most people when they try it, they think it's their favorite. But we did that because we had so many vegans and vegetarians who wanted the benefits of bone broth, but they didn't want to deal with the flavor or the smell of actual beef
Right.
or chicken bone broth. So we add the grass-fed beef gelatin to it. So it still gels. They still get the gelatin content, but it's in something that's more palatable for them.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, Magali, is there anything else that you want to touch on about Kitchen Witch? Is there any other final thoughts about the company, this processed food? I mean, there's a ton here, but is there anything else you want to say?
I don't know. I think we've covered a lot of it. I would say, if there's any nuggets to take from it, it's try and make your own bone broth.
Yeah.
So much available stuff that you can learn online.
Yeah.
If you don't want to deal with it, buy a high quality bone broth, preferably in glass. If you're in the West Coast, then obviously Kitchen Witch is a choice for that. And touch in with your food. Take a look at what you're eating. And we do have our gut reset program, which is our 5-day soup and bone broth program that I created for my private clients, that I saw so much profound shift happen in those 5 days that we started offering it through Kitchen Witch. So if you go to kitchenwitchbroth.com/cleanse, you'll see that program that is a direct drop ship to your house, 5 days of broth and soup, and our access to our full online portal that guides you the whole way. So.
That's awesome. That segues into that last question. So I said, where do people find you if they want to get in on this, what you just gave? Do you guys have any other social media thing that you do?
Yes, if you want to watch me make kvass, you can. I do have an Instagram that I'm trying to be a little more active on, and that's my personal one. That's at the Gutsy Chef. Gutsy, Gutsy Chef, at the Gutsy Chef. And then Kitchen Witch is Kitchen Witch Broth on Instagram as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Magali, thank you for the time, and thank you for all that you're doing. It's an awesome product, and you guys are doing great work. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet.
So fun.
Okay. Take care.
All right. Bye.